just bring you there? So then he kept talking about that, and he said how when I was young, we would have big, like block parties, like festivals. He said, and everyone in the neighborhood would cook something, and they would all bring it. And then he said, the one evening, I told my mother, I want puris. Whole other story. Prabhupada never ate chapatis. Never. Before he was a grahasta, never ate chapatis. He thought they were for low-class people. He said, I had to have puris. So I told my mother. Now he's young. I'm figuring he's around 6 years old or so at this time. And he said, I want puris. And my mother said, it's too late. I'll make you muri, puffed rice. Prabhupada, not someone, when he was young, didn't matter. You didn't tell Prabhupada no. So again, and he's telling me, and I'm massaging, whenever he told me things, I was always doing something. You're never just sitting in front of him and he starts talking to you. At least with me, it was always connected to my service. I always felt that he would speak to me when I was serving. During massage, he would speak to me. Morning massage, evening massage. That's what it was. And I would just never stopped. I don't know if you've ever had anyone do something, sometimes people offer to give me massage and then they start talking about it and they just stop. You never stop your service. So I'm massaging and Prabhupada's saying, next time, I want puris. Second time. His mother said, no, I'll make you muri. It's too late. Third time. Prabhupada said, I want puris. He said, then my father said, if he wants puris, give him puris. And then he said, perhaps my father knew. And that was all he said about that. He would never glorify himself. Sometimes he'd give you little taste, but he said that, perhaps my father knew. And you just had to be hopefully intelligent enough to understand what he was saying. He was that person, that little boy, that person who spread Krishna consciousness all around the world, delivered the Hare Krishna mantra all around the world. We were just in Australia. Thousands of devotees in Perth, thousands of devotees in Melbourne, thousands of devotees in Sydney. Everywhere you go, the results of Srila Prabhupada traveling, he said 15 times around the world. He said 15 times, not 14, he said 15. But that evening he just continued talking. He just went back there. And then he said, I used to have a cow. He said I had a toy cow. Very young, he was a young boy, he was already had his cows, Prabhupada's attachment. And he said there was a thing you would press and the cow would jump like this, he said. This is all 9 o'clock at night as you're giving him a massage. He's telling you all these stories. I would think, why is he telling me these? It was such a privilege, you know, to be the person that happened to be there, that he would talk to you, and jump up and down. And I'm trying to imagine, now you know, he's Prabhupada, and you're trying to imagine your guru, the transcendental personality from the spiritual world. They're trying to think of him as this little boy, you know, like this big. And then he said, that's when he told me about the guns. He said his father, he would go out with his father very much. His love for his father and his mother, but his father so much. His father adored him. Prabhupada adored his father. He said we would go out And then, imagine, this is 1902 in Calcutta. It was probably beautiful, you know, when the British were there. They made the place beautiful, a capital city. Ponds everywhere, gardens. He said, and we went out and past this one shop, and they had guns. So these were probably metal guns back then. They're not going to be plastic. No plastic back then. So he saw the guns. And Prabhupada told his father, I want a gun. His father bought him a gun. We know that Prabhupada had the gun, and he said, and I had the gun in my hand, and I looked at my other hand, and I told my father, I want another gun. His father said, no, you have a gun. Same thing, always 3 times. I could tell you so many stories that end with 3 times. It never gets past 3 times. So again, Prabhupada said, I want a gun, another gun for my other hand. His father said, no. Prabhupada said, I want a gun. And his father resisted. He said, I laid down on the ground, started banging my hands and head on the ground. He said, you see this scar? From that time, he said. It's on his passport. I saw his passport copy. It says, distinguishing marks, scar on the forehead. Prabhupada said that scar was from when he was a little boy because his father wouldn't buy him his gun. Who else could give Krishna to everyone around the world? Such a determination was there from the very beginning. So he got that gun. But it took a lot. Cut his forehead just to get another gun. And then he had both guns. He was happy. I say then, 1965, he had his 2 guns with him. Mahamantra. Of course, maybe 3 in his books. His spiritual master's order. That's what he said. That's all he had. His guru's order and the Mahamantra. So at that time, he had those 2 guns. But he didn't stop. He kept talking. He was just absorbed and so sweet. And then he said, one day we were shopping. So he just went back. He just went back to his childhood, I guess, day after day. And he said, every day my father, he would take him to school. Otherwise, we know Prabhupada hired someone to bring him to school because he didn't like school. He never didn't want to go to school. Sometimes his father would bring him. He said, and we passed this shop. It was English shop. And there were, in the window, there were shoes. He said, and I saw those shoes and I wanted them. He said, they were English shoes. He said they were leather. He said, my father bought me those shoes. He said, I like those shoes very much. So now I'm trying to see all these things in my head as I'm rubbing his legs and his feet. I'm trying to think, Prabhupada walking to school. He said, every day I would wear those shoes going to school. So I said, Prabhupada, when you were walking to school, I said, did you look at your feet, your shoes as you were walking? He started laughing. Yes, he said, yes, I would watch my shoes. He said, as I was walking to school, he said, I liked them so much. Imagine this person, huh? You know, I always say, Prabhupada on the Vyasa-san, I probably sat in front of him for class 1,000 times or so, you know? Close to it, if not that many times. But that's not what ever impressed me about Prabhupada. What impressed me was him in his room as a devotee, a lover of Krishna. He just loved Krishna. Huh? We got to see that in Los Angeles, New Dwarka, in the afternoon. I would read Krishna book. I became the Krishna book reader. And Prabhupada, he was the most attentive person. We're all sitting there, I'm reading, and mentioned this spot. Krishna killing this demon. And we're all just sitting there with Prabhupada, and Prabhupada's on his asana, a little trellis above him, and just sitting there in his saffron cloth, and he starts laughing when Krishna killed the demon, laughing. But he didn't stop. It just increased. And he kept laughing and laughing, and then his body's shaking, and he's sitting and his body's shaking, and tears are coming out of his eyes, and he's laughing and laughing and laughing, and then he starts slapping his knee, laughing so hard. And we all started laughing. Not because of Krishna book, we're laughing watching Prabhupada. He could do that. His ecstasy would overflow. And we were enjoying seeing him enjoying being with Krishna. Laughing and laughing and laughing. Slapping, you know that, huh? In America they say knee slapper. That's the height of laughter. He's slapping your knee. Tears rolling out of his eyes. And then finally he stopped laughing. I continued with the story. So then I thought, because I became, whatever service you did, that was your service. You know, ISKCON in those days, you started doing something, that was your designated service for the rest of your life if you were prepared to do it, even if you're not prepared to do it. So every day I was going to read Krishna book in the afternoon. So I thought, all right, next day, I'm thinking this, I'm going to read a story about Krishna Balaram killing a demon, and Prabhupada's going to laugh just like he did yesterday. That was my plan. And I convinced myself, I'm going to read this one line, because I thought it was hysterical. I was 19, 20 years old. Kirtananda had me read Krishna book during lunch here, right here. Everyone ate lunch at Bahulaban, I read Krishna book. Nighttime, he made me tell the story in the Brahmachari ashram. So now I'm reading Krishna book to Prabhupada. So that was my plan. I have this story. So the next day comes and we all go in and my heart's beating. I'm like, because I have a plan. And you have to wait for Prabhupada's cue. He didn't say things. He didn't say, okay, now you can read. He just looked at you. You should know what to do, just by his glance. Okay, you read, you look. And I had the bookmarker in the Krishna book already. It was one of my favorite stories at the time. It was David Gorilla, because he was such a nasty ape, such a nasty gorilla, did lots of nasty things, you know, was very vulgar and offensive. So to me, that was all very funny. And it was not long into the story, and I'm reading, and I came up to the point. He comes out from behind the bushes, and there's a juggy going on with the Brahmins. The Brahmins are doing their jugya. And what did the gorilla come out to do? He starts passing urine on the jugya. So I thought that was really funny. And I said it. As soon as I said it, Prabhupada started laughing, just like he did yesterday. Exactly like he did yesterday, laughing and laughing, and tears coming down his cheeks, and body shaking and shaking, and slapping his knee and laughing, exactly where I thought it would happen. Just what I thought. He did exactly. He knew. You know, I didn't know at that time. Prabhupada always knew. He could read your mind so easily. He knew everything. He knew everything I was doing. There's so many things I could tell you how I tried to trick him in different ways, and he would expose me, always exposed me. But he started laughing and laughing, and everybody's laughing because Prabhupada's laughing. We're all laughing with Prabhupada. And that was that day. Somehow he satisfied but he enjoyed. And I thought, Prabhupada really likes to hear about the demons, killing of the demons and blood and guts and bifurcating and chopping off heads, whatever it might be, throwing, so many things. So I was going to continue that every day. I said, I'll just find a story of a demon and read it, and this is what's going to happen. So that was the third day. But Krishna, Super Soul, he's in the heart. He gives memory, intelligence, forgetfulness. And somehow or other, we went into the garden that day with Prabhupada, and I hadn't picked a story to read about Krishna killing a demon. I spaced out. And we go and sit down. We offer our obeisances. As soon as we sit up, he looks at me, he said, read. Because he knew what I was doing. He said, read. And I realized I hadn't picked a story. So then I'm going through the pages trying to find the next demoniac person that Krishna's going to kill. And he looked at me, he said, anywhere. He said, Krishna's like a sweet ball. Wherever you bite, it's sweet. So that was my first lesson in trying to manipulate, Srila Prabhupada. But I completely forgot everything. And he just took advantage to give me instruction. So many instructions. He had such a way of instructing me, being with him. So many things he told me to do, not to do, what was right, I never realized he was talking to me, because he did it in this like he was just speaking in general. I happened to be in the room and he was just saying something. When he was telling me exactly what I should be doing, what I shouldn't be doing, it literally 30, 40 years went by before I thought, oh, he was telling me I shouldn't do this. Because you always have to make the choice. Just like New Vrindavan. I never served Prabhupada in New Vrindavan. Actually, I was never a servant in New Vrindavan. It was twice. It was my launching pad, The first time, 72, Janmashtami. I didn't get to go up on the hill. No, I didn't see Prabhupada classes. Everything I was relishing in Los Angeles, I didn't get to do here because this is where we served. This is where we were busy 24 hours a day. So I was just in the kitchen all the time. So I was lamenting I didn't get Prabhupada's association. Anyway, of course, I left with him. I was with him for 16 months. And then it was the end of the year, December. We were in Los Angeles, 1973. And that was the first time I left Srila Prabhupada's personal service. And I went and got married. And Prabhupada, he didn't say much. He didn't say anything. He could understand he's hopeless. He's already gone. There's nothing I can do. I see that with me. He wouldn't tell me to do something he knew I couldn't do, because that's an offense. That's a big offense. If he tells you directly, you do this and you don't do it, it's a big offense. When I was 8 months earlier in Los Angeles, he got a letter from a temple president. I'm giving Prabhupada a massage. I'm behind him. Half the massage are behind him, massaging his head and his back. That's half the massage, mostly on his back. And the secretary would come in and read the mail. He didn't just get a massage sitting there. Massage meant he heard the mail, he would dictate answers, the Sanskrit editor would come in, ask him questions about diacritics, transliteration, word meanings. So all this was going on during massage. So this secretary reads this letter. And in the letter, the devotee was a temple president, and he tells Prabhupada he wants to divorce his wife and marry this other woman. And Prabhupada said, yes, it's okay. I'm massaging him, I'm behind him. And I'm thinking, Prabhupada said, never divorce. You look in his books, look in his letters, never approved. And I'm thinking, and Prabhupada just so easily said, yes, okay. Tell him, okay, go ahead. And I didn't say anything. That was like noontime. So all day, I was disturbed. I'm thinking, Prabhupada, he approved this divorce. So my time came in the evening, 10 o'clock at night. Prabhupada's lying in bed and I'm massaging him. And one thing I tried to learn while I was with Prabhupada was if you're going to ask him a question, you better know what you're asking and you better be ready for his response. And it's like multiple choice. If he says this, you have to be ready with that answer. If he says this, so I had all day to think about it. And I was going to wait until it was evening time, massage, a special time. And he's lying there. Of course, this is a very comfortable time for Prabhupada. Everything he's doing all day, it was amazing to me. He always seemed so peaceful. And he's lying in bed very peacefully. And of course, I finally opened my mouth and said, Prabhupada, yes. I said, today, during the massage, I said that devotee asked about getting a divorce and getting remarried. Before I could even finish my sentence, he said, yes. I told him it's all right. And then I knew if he said that. And I said, yes, but Prabhupada, you say this divorce, divorce is, you can't get divorced. He said, yes, well, in your country, these things are going on. I also had a remedy for that response, I thought. And I said, yes, but so is intoxication and meat eating. So I went down. I said, of course, these are all. He said, yes. Then he changed. His mood changed, just like that. It went from and he said, if I tell him no, he's going to do it anyway. He said, and that would be more of an offense. Therefore, I said, it's okay. This is our lives. It's not just one person. This all of us. All Prabhupada wants to see us do, keep engaged in devotional service. Whatever your situation is, just perform devotional service. Try to help him spreading this mission. So I'm leaving him, and of course, a letter comes. After 16 months with him, a letter comes from Kirtanananda Swami. So Shrita Kirti is getting married and leaving your service, so tell him come back to New Vrindavan. Prabhupada calls me into the room, offer obeisances, I sit down, and you can imagine at that time my state of mind. Maybe you can't imagine my state of mind at that time. And he says, he's got the letter from Maharaj in front of him. He said, so he didn't say go back to New Vrindavan. He said, Kirtanananda wants you to come back to New Vrindavan. I said, yes, Prabhupada. I said, I've already made arrangements with, what the heck was his name? Chiksukananda. He wants me to go to Caracas, Venezuela. I'll be the only Brahmin there in the temple, give classes, cook in the kitchen. He said, okay. That was the end of it. About a month later, he gets a letter from, I think it was Mukunda Maharaj in England. They want to start a farm outside of London. And Mukunda Maharaj wrote a letter and said, Prabhupada, could you request that the devotees, each temple, they send 2 devotees from the temple to come and work on the farm. And Prabhupada said, Shrutakirti wouldn't even go back to the farm. He said, you have to get your own men locally. You can't depend on getting people from outside to come and work on the farm. One thing I see here is so many God brothers and God sisters that have been here for many, many years, many decades, some of you since the very beginning. Such a wonderful service, developing New Vrindavan. And coming here, see, you certainly have Srila Prabhupada's blessings as it grows. You know, I'm traveling to places where I see community shrinking. Here you see community growing. So it's only by pleasing Srila Prabhupada. You know, you may think this way or that way. He certainly wanted to be ideal community to show everyone. It was 1973 on a morning walk in Cheviot Hills, Los Angeles. Prabhupada walked in two places, Cheviot Hills Park around the lake, or he would go to the beach. He would go to the beach and walk by the ocean. So one morning he's Cheviot Hills Park. It was 52 years ago. And he was talking about civilization. And he said how everyone is being lied to. He said in this modern civilization, everyone's being lied to. And one of the devotees said, oh, Prabhupada, this has been going on for thousands of years. And Prabhupada said, no. He said, just the last few hundred years, this has been happening. He said this civilization. And then he said, this civilization will be finished 50 years, he said. 50 years finished. That was 52 years ago. Then it was 50 years ago. It was very 50th anniversary, Gur Purnima time in Mayapur. I was on that morning walk. It's a famous morning walk, Prabhupada walking outside the Lotus building along the rice paddies, surrounded by 20 devotees, big, big devotees, many, many dundas, all surrounding him. And Prabhupada said, soon there'll be a war. As soon as, that's all we had to hear. You know, devotees, especially Los Angeles, they've been waiting for LA to fall into the ocean for 50 years now in Los Angeles. You know, people moved from there decades ago, waiting for the ocean to fall, or the land to fall into the ocean. But he said, soon there'll be a war. And he said it would start between India and Pakistan. You might have, some of you who follow the news, you might have known a month or two ago, the guns started between India and Pakistan in Kashmir area. Oh, you should, even in Vrindavan, what do we do? What do we do? Everyone. So Prabhupada said that, and they're all thinking the same thing. What do we do? What do we do? And then Prabhupada said, these farm communities, he said, will be most important. He said they'll come by the millions to the farms. Not that he said they'll be devotees. He said, but you can engage them. They work, you feed them, and gradually they'll make some progress in spiritual life. He said, but they'll come by the millions. He said, preaching would be very good after the war. But the devotees, the idea of a war soon, was shocking to many of them, and they wanted more details, remember. And Prabhupada could see at one point, he saw everybody getting all excited, and he said, if the bomb comes, he said, we look up, here comes Krishna. That was his thing. Not to worry. Devotee's not concerned. Live or die, doesn't matter. Always engaged in devotional service. So at that point, he kind of shut it down, this idea of the war coming. But he did want us to use our intelligence to get these communities together, these farm communities. And I see some of them getting together more now. We have the one down in Louisiana going on still after this time. So many things. But for a devotee, very important to understand what is important. I see flashing on social media all the time. Don't contemplate what's going to happen in this world. Your business is chant Hare Krishna, get out of here. This is only a short time. We're here in this body. Not a long time. Some of us, we can tell you, 50 years goes by like that, very, very quickly. I never imagined that I would be 74 years old. Never saw it coming, but it comes. Like it was earlier, the devotee was saying, Prabhupada said, don't think this won't happen to you, in his final months when we saw Prabhupada there. So this is all going on. Prabhupada said, but our business is chanting Hare Krishna, simple living, high thinking. Always tell people, because I realized it myself, simple living didn't mean easy. We have ideas, something simple's easy, but simple living on a farm, not easy. Although Prabhupada said you do your business just like wintertime, you have more time to chant Hare Krishna. When the time is busy, you have to you do your work. Get ready for the winter. Get ready for the time of death. But this is always what Srila Prabhupada wanted. And he wanted us to live simply. I remember him saying at one time, those devotees that weren't preachers, what should they do? Live on the farm. He said, if you're not preaching, you should go live on the farm. He said, there's only two reasons, he said, to live in the West. Preaching and sense gratification. These are the two options you have. You know, if you're not preaching, you're only here for sense gratification. And I can tell you that, frankly, living in Vrindavan, there's no sense gratification. My wife and I, we've been there 5 years. Now, after I left Prabhupada, I was gone for 6 months. Before me was Nanda Kumar. He was brahmachari with Prabhupada for 1.5 years. He left and got married. I was with Prabhupada 1.5 years, left and got married. So Prabhupada never picked his servants. It just kind of happened, what do they say, you know, naturally, organically it happened. But now Prabhupada thought, I'll get Satsarup Maharaj to be my servant. Because Maharaj, he's not going to leave me and get married. But after 6 months, he left. To be with pure devotee is not an easy thing. To be with Srila Prabhupada was ecstatic. It was the most wonderful thing. But that ecstasy, that wonderfulness doesn't come without austerity. Krishna consciousness, happiness in Krishna consciousness, you can't have ecstatic Krishna consciousness without austerity. You know, and with Prabhupada, you got equal doses of both. Had lots of austerity. I see now, traveling around 2.5 months or so, how hard it is. Place after place, one place after another, after another, after another. Prabhupada never complained. The only time I knew Prabhupada was sick, he would call me in. He said, today, make khichdi. That meant he didn't feel good. He was going to eat khichdi instead of preparing his cooker, rice, chapatis, dals, sabjis. He said, today make khichdi. And his formula for khichdi was very simple. It was 1 part dal, 2 part rice, and just salt and turmeric. That was it. That was his not feeling well khichdi. So one day he called me in. He said, I'm not feeling well. He said, today I won't take lunch. And this won't sound very nice, but for me that was a big relief because preparing his lunch and massage went on at the same time. You have to understand this cooker mechanism. He showed me 3 days how to use this cooker in Dallas. I massaged him in the kitchen next to the cooker so he could show me how to use it. That cooker would be under the flame for 1.5 hours, sometimes more, sometimes less. and you've got dal in the bottom, you've got all these cut vegetables in the center, and rice in the top in water, which will steam. Can you imagine vegetables steaming for 90 minutes? And they have to turn out not mushy, they have to have texture. So it was an art, I guess. You had to put the flame just so it just did just right. Somehow it always worked. So when he said, today no lunch, I'm not feeling well, I'll have no lunch today. So you would feel bad, but then, because it's all I did during the massage. By massaging, I'm thinking about the cooker in the other room. Sometimes across the street, this cooker was going on. You'd have to run back and forth in your gumsha across the street, making Prabhupada's lunch. So anyway, he said that, and we started massaging. About 15 minutes into the massage, I'm behind him, and he said, you can make khichdi. I said, Prabhupada, I haven't started anything. That's okay. He said, whenever it's ready. He said, but I'll have khichdi. I said, yes, Prabhupada, okay. Khichdi's not difficult. It's pretty simple. Yes, Prabhupada. So I'm massaging. Finish his back. I'm on the side of him. He said, you can make full lunch. Prabhupada, that's okay whenever it's ready, which is not true. He's saying that. You literally have 20 minutes while he's bathing, dressing, putting on tilak and saying Gayatri. You're going to have that lunch when he's unfurling his thread. You better be bringing in the lunch. You had everything, every moment with Prabhupada, every moment, every second, you had to know what you were doing. People say what happens. When you lose that attentiveness, you're finished. And that's what you understand Krishna consciousness is. Every moment, you have to be Krishna conscious. Like in Australia, some of you, hopefully you've seen Prabhupada's videos, so many videos in Australia. And there's that one young brahmachari, Prabhupada, how long does it take to become Krishna conscious? What does Prabhupada say? A moment, he said, a moment. But then those moments keep coming. It's not that you just become Krishna conscious and you're finished. No, it's constant. Every moment, Prabhupada was Krishna conscious. When he got up from his nap in the afternoon, all morning, doing letters, responding to letters. He would bring people in from the temple, discussing management, what's going on in the temple, encouraging him. Then he had his massage, dictating letters, hearing from his Sanskrit editor. But he would sit and take lunch so comfortably, and always alone. 99 times out of 100, unless he was at some public function. And if someone was in the room, like us, breakfast time, he would say, come here, and hand you a little piece of fruit, a little maha prasadam, and say, now you can go. He literally would kick you out of the room in the sweetest way. Now you can go, he would say. And then he took his nap in the afternoon. Nap was half hour, sometimes a little longer. When I became his servant, of course I was petrified. Everything is there. You're so excited to be with Prabhupada, but you also have no idea what you're doing. There was no manual, servant's manual. I say, now we have a manual for everything. We have retreats for everything. How to GBC, how to become an initiating guru, how to become a disciple, how to chant japa part 1, part 2. Devotees, always same answer. They would say, Prabhupada, how do I control my mind when I chant japa? No question of mind, he would say. You chant with the tongue. And Prabhupada was demonstrative. Chant with the tongue, you hear with the ears. 3 times, same question, same answer. Chant with the tongue, hear with the ears. Say, shortest japa retreat ever. I don't know how, it's my I don't know how, they fill you up with so many things in your mind, I don't know how you can chant japa. Because all you're supposed to do is hear the holy name. Prabhupada made it so simple. You just chant and you listen. It's not difficult. And when you stop listening, you bring it back. That's all, you bring it back. So he literally bypassed that whole spot, you know. We consider the minds in here somewhere. So he just went from here to here. Chant with the tongue, hear with the ears. That was Prabhupada. Made everything so easy. What was I thinking? Yes. We have some time, I guess, right? We've got plenty of time. I wanted Kuladri to join me. We have another microphone here. If you care to, you can come. He has some wonderful pastimes with Srila Prabhupada. He was there, you know, from the very beginning. And I see that also. There's connections that happen as devotees. And they don't go away, hopefully. We have our, Kuladri was always #1 here in New Vrindavan in those days. Kirtananda had me follow him around. I was like a personal servant back in those days, early on, going to colleges, eating khichdi. Same khichdi he taught me how to make, I was making for Prabhupada back at that time. But most important thing is how to be attentive. Once he called in his secretary. Because see, sometimes we would think, we would assume what Prabhupada was going to do. That you knew what he was going to do. So he made some travel arrangements, his secretary, without consulting Prabhupada. Ooh. That happened a few times. I saw that happened a few times. So this time he called him. Called my secretary, called him in. He offered obeisances. Prabhupada looked at him. He said, you don't move a pin from here to here without asking me. That's what it was like to be with Srila Prabhupada. Everything you do, you had to know what he wanted you to do. Krishna Balaram Mandir, he called me in the room. See, again, I didn't realize he was talking to me when he was very clearly talking to me. I offered my obeisances and sat up. He said, first-class servant knows what to do without being asked. He's telling me, obviously there was something I missed. Then he said, second-class servant, you tell him what to do, and he does it. That's second class, not even first class. You're already second class if he has to tell you what to do. You're supposed to know what to do. He said, in third class servant, you tell him what to do, he doesn't do it. Or he said, or he does it begrudgingly. Prabhupada's mastery of English language, every word he used was filled with meaning and just does it begrudgingly, he said. I'm going, yes, Prabhupada. At that very place, he'd ring his bell, offer obeisances, he'd go like that, and turn on the fans. He didn't say turn on the fans, he'd just go, there you go. And then open the curtains, or close the curtains, just by a glance. That's what he wanted. Should know what to do all the time as a devotee.
Okay.
You know what to do?
There was a time when Vrindavan was quarantined, and I would go to India once, twice a year on arranging carving and purchasing for the deities and those kinds of things. And during that time, Prabhupada was in Mayapur, so I went to Mayapur, and I happened to show him the latest drawings of Prabhupada's palace. And showed him, he was looking at the details. There were times when I would show him, when I showed him the Sringasan, and Prabhupada would comment on the Sringasan that's behind the six Goswamis. But this time it was the drawings of Prabhupada's palace. So this was early on, and Prabhupada looked at the drawings, had some questions. Then we walked out on the veranda, and Prabhupada said, all over the world, my disciples are building temples for Krishna. He said, but in New Vrindavan, you're building your palace. He said, thank you very much. That was what we did for Prabhupada. Glorifying Prabhupada. So, there are times when Shruti Kirti and I had, similar experiences, and I was with Prabhupada. It was 74 when Krishna Balaram was supposed to open, right? But it wasn't ready, and it was really rough. There was no bathrooms and, nowhere. It was difficult. So then malaria spread. So Shruti Kirti got sick, and so I had to step up and take care of Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada got sick, and I was sleeping on the ground next to him every night. And when Prabhupada had to get up and go to the bathroom, you had to lift him and carry him. And at that time in India, they would shut off the electricity at night, so there were no fans. And then it became very hot. So there was a bed outside with a mosquito net, and we'd go from inside to outside. So I had to carry, arms under him, walk him to the bed, and then I had to run back and get some of the bed in and fix it. So Prabhupada's standing there, frail, and he sees me trying to scramble, and he just says softly, do it nicely. He wants us to do everything nicely. Do it nicely. So that stuck with me. So there were times when then Prabhupada, I got sick because I was sleeping on the floor next to him. I got mosquito, like you said. So Shruti Kirti was getting better at that time. I think one of the secretaries came in. Oh, there was a story, Prabhupada's sister, Prishima. We were trying to shield Srila Prabhupada from his sister's cooking. You know these stories. Yeah, well, so Prishima wanted to cook, and Prabhupada was sick, so we were doing very little things. Grape juice, sometimes Horlicks, whatever. There were different things at the time. So Jamuna there was a little room next to Prabhupada's room, and so Jamuna comes in with Prishima, and she's trying to translate. And Prishima is telling her, Prabhupada likes you very much. He likes you more than the other one. He's talking about Shruti. So he said, now you bring in, I've cooked something for Prabhupada, now you please bring it in. So she was, she was working the servants, And so somehow or other, I said, okay, Mataji, okay, but somehow or other, Jamuna was able to persuade her that, okay, he'll do it, but he can't do it now. And so she had to pull her out because she was still cooking Bengali sabjis and mustard oil. So it was, Prabhupada said, don't let her cook for me. Don't let her cook for me. So that was one of the experiences we had. So there was a period of time, then I caught malaria, and I got, at the time there were the doll makers that were doing the dioramas and things, Bardaraj and Rukmini and the crew. And so Bardaraj had become very sick, and so he was in one of the shacks along the side of Krishna Balaram. So when I caught malaria, that's where they put me. And I was in the same shack as Bardaraj, and 106 fever, and they were dying. Yeah, that's what was happening. Rukmini happened to come in because at that time she was married to Bardaraj. She saw me. She got some cold water. She got some quinine, and basically, I was able to recover. Prabhupada came in, so we were still sick in that bed, and he had a tapeworm, and he couldn't keep anything in, and he had a tapeworm. Prabhupada came out to the shack to see us, and it had happened that the Bardaraj had passed the tapeworm in the morning, and Prabhupada came out, looked at Bardaraj, and he said, "So the intruder has left you." So, and Prabhupada asked me how I was doing. And then a few days later, I was recovering. Shruti Kirti had recovered. We went into Sri Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, "You two Brahmin boys, you two brothers, you go spend the day at the Jamuna." He said. So we headed off, and that was rarity, right? Prabhupada never let his servants go, so we went. Shruti Kirti showed me how to cover yourself in mud, and you dry out in the Vrindavan sun, and then you take a dip in the Jamuna. So that's how we spent the day, recovering. And so those are sweet memories. Bitter sweet because Prabhupada was suffering. And other stories about New Vrindavan. When he was talking about Juhu, there were the apartments in the back, and that's where Prabhupada stayed. And he was leaving for Kumbh Mela in the morning, and he had asked me, "So please make prasadam for me to travel on the train." And I had been trained by Kirtanananda, as you were, about how to cook, and Prabhupada liked our cooking very much. So he said, I said, "Okay, Prabhupada," and I knew he was taking an early train, so I was waiting till later in the evening to cook for him. He was sitting with businessmen, as they would in Juhu, and they would stay up late, very late, and he was preaching. So Prabhupada saw me. I would try to catch a word in, English, Hindi. I couldn't really understand, but I was there. So, and the rooms were tight. I mean, the kitchen was 4 steps away from where he was talking. So he looked at me while he was talking. He said, "You're not cooking?" I said, now I'm. So I said, "Okay, Prabhupada." So I went running into the kitchen and started cooking. So he kept talking, and then eventually they left, and the whole apartment smelled like samosas. That's what I was making, and a few kachoris. Kachori muki, right? But you told me you never made kachori. That's so so Prabhupada walks past me to go to his room, and he said, "I want to taste." So Hari Sari was packing up for the trip on the train. So I started to prepare. I had I think I had New Vrindavan ghee with me. Usually when we came to India, we brought New Vrindavan goodies, ghee, whatever. We would sometimes pack New Vrindavan ice cream in dry ice so that Prabhupada would get fresh. In fact, I think that mango ice cream from New Vrindavan was the last sweet that Prabhupada tasted. I gave him a taste of New Vrindavan mango ice cream. So Prabhupada said, taste. So I brought in 2 samosas. Now, the samosas we made back in those days were different. It was a paste. You couldn't tell it was cauliflower and potato. You cooked it down to a dark paste. And the crust was flaky. It was like pastry crust. It wasn't like this, often what you taste now. So 2 small samosas and a small kachori. So I brought it back in, I brought it into Prabhupada. Hari Sari was packing. I went back, keep cooking because I was cooking a batch for the train ride. So when I was cooking for him, the longer it took, the happier I became. Because if you heard the bell right away, that meant Prabhupada, he didn't like what he was having. So, so it took some time and more time and more time. So I'm dancing in the kitchen, like, 10 feet away from Prabhupada. So anyway, the bell rings, I go in, pay obeisances, ready to grab the plate. Prabhupada says, 1 more samosa, please. So he said that this, what you've learned, these samosas, he said, this is our standard. He said, these are first class, this is our standard. And so it's about training and sticking to, the way Prabhupada taught us. And that's how he taught kids of Ananda how to cook, and that's how he taught us how to cook. And we passed it down, and we're fortunate that Prabhupada enjoyed it. So, and when he was leaving the next day, it's like 4 in the morning, and we're paying obeisances. He's getting on the train to go to Kumbh Mela. Prabhupada looked at me and said, first class, that is our standard. So, he always said nice things to me. And I, certainly don't deserve them. And then there's the story about how many you have seen up at the palace. If you look in the case, there's a clay imprint of Prabhupada's feet. And the story behind that clay was Prabhupada was going to the New York Rath Yatra, the big one down 5th Avenue, first time, big Rath Yatra. And we came up and I brought a briefcase. Now, New Vrindavan, we didn't have briefcases, There was nothing in a briefcase at New Vrindavan. So in the briefcase there was clay, and it was New Vrindavan clay. And we had just we were doing the Guru Puja, and this was early on in practicing Guru Puja. So he came to Prabhupada and said, can I take an imprint of your lotus feet, so that during Guru Puja, the devotees can offer flowers to your lotus feet. And Prabhupada said, okay. So I opened up the briefcase and put the clay down, covered it with some powder so Prabhupada didn't step in the clay. And Prabhupada, I held his hand and Prabhupada stepped on the clay. So, stepped on the clay, then I helped him and he stepped off the clay. And then when I looked at the clay, there was no mark. I'm like, there was no print of Prabhupada. He made absolutely no impression. I've heard this happen. Malati has told the story, and I know that Jamuna has told the story. Sometimes the Prabhupada would walk on the beach, and they'd be looking, and there were no imprints on the sand. So, but this is true. But practically, if I went back to New Vrindavan and said, he stepped on him, but there was no prints, they would have, you got to get it done. That was, you just do what you had to do to get it done. So I said, oh, Srila Prabhupada, let me work on the clay, and we'll try again. Okay, so Prabhupada went to take prasadam. So I dusted off his feet. Unfortunately, I didn't keep that towel. If I only kept that towel. Anyway, so Prabhupada said, okay, so we went, Sudhanu and I went and added water, massaged it, made it nice and soft, put powder on it again. So I said, okay, Prabhupada, it's ready. So Prabhupada stepped on the clay, and this time I pressed every single toe. Every toe. Grabbed him by the heel, I pressed it down, I made him make the imprint on this one. So then Prabhupada stepped off, I dusted his feet, took his charter, and he went on the New York Rath Yatra. So then I brought that imprint back, and then Sudana made a cast, and that's what you see in many temples, the original footprints of Srila Prabhupada. And up at the palace, you can actually see the actual dust from Prabhupada's lotus feet. And like that. Did you bring Prabhupada's feet?
Yes.
Speaking of Prabhupada's lotus feet, how much time are we still have time? Okay.
Everyone okay?
What? What do you want to say? Yeah. You know, when Prabhupada came to New Vrindavan, there's a lot of talk about Varnashram, but when Prabhupada came, he didn't come and speak on Varnashram Dharma, he spoke on Bhagavad Dharma. Prabhupada was here presenting Lord Chaitanya's movement and following in the footsteps of the Goswamis and his spiritual master. So I see at New Vrindavan that what we dedicated ourselves to was became the preaching that Prabhupada established in his Bhagavad Dharma in the holy place of pilgrimage, so that now we have, 130,000 visitors a year to New Vrindavan, for the sacrifice that we did. And we can tell you those stories about the oat water and rice, and about those devotees who could only survive if they could steal Mahaprasadam out of the closet. And the austerities that we did, most of you, I'll tell you another story. Many of you know Katila, my wife. She ran about 40% of New Vrindavan. She was the original matriarch of New Vrindavan. But she's never in her entire life been to India one time. She was given many tickets by her parents, but she gave them to Sankirtan devotees. And she was always cleaning and cooking for Prabhupada, so she didn't get much association. So I was with Prabhupada from Juhu when Prabhupada made that decision. I was with him when Prabhupada was very sick, and he said, well, they were asking him, Prabhupada, let us take you to the best doctors in the world, or Prabhupada was asking, should I go to Vrindavan and spend my last days in Vrindavan? And there were JBCs and sannyasis there, and this was my shift, so I was with Prabhupada at the time. So the talk went around and around and around, and they were begging him, you've got to continue Lord Chaitanya's movement, and then Prabhupada said, okay, I will think. And then they left, and I was with Prabhupada, and he asked me, so what do you think? I said, Srila Prabhupada, I'm just an intruder. But it seems to me you're waiting for Krishna to make a decision, so why not wait in Vrindavan? And Prabhupada gave me another, yes, thank you very much. And so we went on the train. Srinathji Prabhu took us to the train. And a funny story on the way to the train, Tamal Krishna kept telling Srinathji, slow down, slow down, slow down. And Prabhupada said, no, go fast, no, go fast. And Srinathji would try and, he didn't know what to do because Tamal Krishna was telling him to go fast, Prabhupada was telling him to go slow. And so he finally listened to Prabhupada, he kept going. When they get to the train station, the train was going to leave 20 minutes early. And if they hadn't hurried up, they would have missed the train to Mathura. So, Prabhupada's empowered so many ways. So, took him to Mathura, took him to Vrindavan, and those days were very intense. Tried to make Prabhupada some mung water to try and cover. One of the Kavi Raj says maybe he'll react to mung water. We had oat water, but I didn't happen to bring that. So then I had been with Prabhupada, I don't know, about a month and a half, and so Kirtan, because then the story came out, Prabhupada's going to spend his last days here in Vrindavan. So Kirtananda Swami showed up, and that's when we brought the mango ice cream for Srila Prabhupada. It was a very difficult time. So, along with that gift, he brought Prabhupada a new set of silk clothing, a whole outfit for himself that was handmade by Katila. And so
up. So I go back to the kitchen and they got his silver goblet and I fill it up, ice cold 7-Up, and I come and it's on the plate, and I come back to the door and he's trying to get it from me, my godbrother, and I'm like, no, and I was usually very, like, passive, kind of, but I'm like, no, I said, this is my service, So I went in, and it's on the plate, and I put it down, and the cup's on the plate. Prabhupada's sitting down, and he looks, and he sees the bubbles. He says, what is that? I said, oh, Prabhupada. I said, it's 7-Up. He said, oh. So he picks it up, and he takes a sip, and he goes, he said, very refreshing. And then, everything just stopped. Prabhupada got up, he stood up next to his table, and he's just holding his cup, and he just kept drinking. He'd take a sip, he'd take another sip, and nothing else went on for the next few minutes as he's drinking the 7-Up, And then finally he finished it, he put the cup down. I said, would you like more, Prabhupada? He said, no. He said, that's all right. So then, a day or two later, Bali Murdan talking about getting a new temple. This was 73, we're going to get a new temple. And he said, we have this temple to look at. Well, it was a church, big cathedral, I think 5th Avenue or somewhere, and he wanted Prabhupada to see it. So that morning, it's after breakfast, and Kirtiraj is driving, and Bali Murdan sitting next to him, and Prabhupada and I are in the back seat of this little Toyota car. And we drive to this place, and it's beautiful, 100-year-old cathedral, in New York City. And we all get out of the car, and then Bali says, well, we can't go in, Prabhupada. We don't want them to know, we're Hare Krishnas and everything. But we're looking at it from the curb. And Prabhupada looked in, the church doors were open. And if you've ever been in a church, they're pretty amazing places, high cathedral ceilings and everything there. And Prabhupada said, oh, we'll call this Gauranga Hall. Immediately, he just boom, this will be Gauranga Hall, he said. And then that was that. And then he looks behind him, and there's a little store, mom and pop store. And Prabhupada looks at me. He said, do they have up 7? And I said, yes, Prabhupada. And I looked at Kirtiraj. I said, Prabhupada wants a 7-Up. And he's like, what? I said, a 7-Up, get a 7-Up. So he goes in the store, he comes out with 1 can of 7-Up. 1 can, there's 4 of us there. He comes out with 1 can of 7-Up. So I open it up, give it to Prabhupada, and he's got his cane out in his one hand, and he's standing there in the corner of New York City, and he's got the can, and he's drinking from the can of 7-Up in New York City, and everyone's looking at Prabhupada. Anyone in the world could be drinking it, but when you see Prabhupada with a can of 7-Up, it's a very rare, something very rare to appreciate. And he took a few sips, and then he said, okay, and we all get back into the car. So I'm next to Prabhupada, and he hands me the can, and immediately there's 4 hands all reaching for the can of 7-Up, so we all shared that. And then a few days later, Prabhupada went to Los Angeles, and he goes up into his room, and Karundar comes in the room, said, Prabhupada, he said, all the devotees have 7-Ups in their refrigerators now, Prabhupada said, no, he said, that's not good. He said, they shouldn't do that. He said, I just took a little just for my digestion, he said. But he said, it's not good everyone does that. But from that time, whenever he was on a flight, he was like, everyone he would give 7-Up to whoever was on the plane, all the devotees, drinks for everyone. So that was where you could have 7-Up was in the airplane. And then, Guru Kripa told me a story. We were talking when Prabhupada left Vrindavan. This was September 77. And that's when he went to the manor, thought maybe he could start preaching or get well or something. And anyway, they're on the airplane. I wasn't on it. And it stopped in Dubai. So in Prabhupada, the devotees, they just stood up the whole flight from India to Dubai so Prabhupada could lie down. Had his dark glasses on then, you know, the shades. And then when the plane stopped in Dubai, of course, everyone had to get in their seats because other people were coming and going. So Guru Kripa said he sat Prabhupada up and he's sitting next to him. The plane stopped there. You know, he felt horrible, you know, seeing Prabhupada. He said lying there and, you know, sometimes drool coming down his mouth and not talking, not doing anything. And he said, Guru Kripa looked at Prabhupada. He said, Prabhupada, is there anything I can do? And Prabhupada said, oh, he said, get me a 7-Up. Prabhupada was transcendental personality that, you know, could never understand. You can never understand, but you could appreciate everything about him, you know, every movement, every word, every sight about him. And that's why we're all here. That's all. Yes.
Do you know the story of Kishore, when Kishore cooked for Prabhupada? I'm sure she cooked many times, but this particular time?
No, do you? She had many experiences with Srila Prabhupada, yeah.
Yeah, she cooked this one time, and she cooked a large quantity, knowing that Srila Prabhupada ate very little. And so she cooked, in her mind, a large quantity for a reason. She made herself a plate, and she made her husband a plate. And then they served Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada ate everything. And then they asked for more. And then, so she went back, and okay, Prabhupada's taking seconds, fine. So she went and gave him seconds. He ate it, ate everything. He asked for more. And this continued till there was nothing left in the pot, and he still asked for more, so she had to take what was on their plate and serve him, that she had put aside for her and her husband. And when that was all finished, Prabhupada said, next time you cook for your spiritual master.
Yeah, very good. Yes, it's time. After 8 o'clock, Hare Krishna.
So give a big applause to His Grace, Mr. Krishna Prabhu and Prabhu Prabhu. We thank very much both of you for sharing these wonderful adventures and experiences with Srila Prabhupada. Every time you speak about it, it creates another personality of Srila Prabhupada for us and helps us to remind him more and more, and hopefully makes us much more eager to serve him. So we thank you very much. We are serving prasad, simple prasad under the Yagashala since 40 minutes. I see that we have a cake, but no knife and no plates. So we bring it down there, and we will ask Krutakirti actually to cut the cake down there. Okay?
Gopish, do you have a knife on you?
For sure. So thank you all devotees for coming tonight. It was very nice to have you all here and have this wonderful experience in our community. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna devotees, before you leave, we'll take one photo next to the Vyasasana of Srila Prabhupada because we have so many exalted devotees and disciples of Srila Prabhupada. So right now we'll just take one photo and then everyone can go and take prasadam. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Everyone can come next to the Vyasasana and we'll take a photo of Vaishnavas.